And it started out when my son took his life. That was kind of the beginning. My wife and I were going through some marriage challenges. We've been married 37 years now.
Welcome, listeners and viewers. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Grace Upper, your host, and this is Rising Above Shadows of Abuse. Raza. Meet our wonderful guest, Andy Campbell. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
To impact others as well. Because when
Yeah.
others who are going through see your testimony or the way you've turned out, it's a lifeline. It's a way of encouraging others that, look, it happened to me, but you don't have to dwell in what happened to you. You don't have to dwell in the pain. Summon up the courage and do the work. And that's what you've done. And I do understand what you were saying earlier on. You were taking those substances because that was your coping mechanism. That was the only way you could actually suppress the pain in order to live, in order to be able to do your day-to-day activities. So you're not to blame. That was the only way you could function. And I guess your therapist must have told you that as well.
I think you kind of, that one decision eventually, and it started out when my son took his life. That was kind of the beginning of, I'd been to therapy before and I'd done cognitive behavioral therapy and I started to realize, a decade earlier that life had take responsibility now. The things that had happened to me had been put on me. They were other people's decisions. But at some point during that initial kind of phase, my wife and I were going through some marriage challenges. We've been married 37 years now, but at that time, we had 4 children under the age of 5. We didn't have family around. It was just us. I was providing, financially for the family. She was staying at home, raising the family. And the pressure of all of that, along with the history, just started to, cause cracks. And she was like, listen, we have to go to somebody and deal with this. And so I didn't want to lose my marriage. And so I decided to go. And at first I went into therapy thinking, man, finally we're going to go and somebody's going to help my wife be, like take care of her problems. And so, but then the more you got into it, it was like, hey, wait a minute, you might be contributing. And then it turned out it was like, well, you might be the problem. And to that, I saw a meme the other day, or a question the other day. I shouldn't say it was a meme, but it said, are you having a bad day, or is the day having a bad you? And I thought about that, and I went back to when I first started in therapy, because there was a transition in that where I came to the place of saying, I'm just having a bad day, and here are all the people causing me bad days. My wife, my children, my work, customers, like everybody's causing me a bad day. And then somewhere along that way, I started thinking, well, what if the day was okay and you were just the problem, right? And what if the day was fine and you were the day had a bad you. And the more I started to think about that, then I had to confront, well, what if it's not everybody else? And then what if it doesn't matter if my wife does anything different or the world does anything different or my job is no, because wherever I go, I'll be there. So if I left my job and I went someplace else, I'd still be there. If I left my wife and I went to, with another woman, I'd still be there. You can't run away from you. You can run away from the situation that you screwed up, but you can't run away from you. And even though all these things were done to me by outside forces, it was in that process where I started to realize, like, yeah, but now it's time for me to face, like, I am perpetuating not those exact acts, but those things that happen they're causing me to do things that are not optimal, right? I'm not engaging with my wife the right way. I'm not engaging with the world in an optimal way. And so that began the process of kind of confronting. The first thing was to confront, it's like, oh, it's not everybody else. It's like, and that didn't dismiss all the things, the sexual abuse that, or any of the other abuse along the way. That didn't dismiss any of that. But once those things are away from me, if those things keep influencing me, I do have the choice to not allow those things to go any further, not allow them to influence my relationships and my outlook on the world. And I think that was the first time that I really looked at things and went, wow, what if the day is having a bad me? And then after my son passed away, God really delivered to us a wonderful grief therapist, counselor. And her father's a minister at a local AME church. And she, that was just like her calling, was to help people with grief. And she was just a lifesaver. Like that's one of those things where I know Providence stepped in. It's like, that's who you need to talk to. But there came a time where that still small voice was like, it's time for you to do this next thing. You need to do this. And somewhere along the way, I'd heard about EMDR, and I felt prompted to look for that. And then God provided me, myself, my wife, my children. He provided us with just another wonderful person who, with looking back on it, she was just like she was the one that just helped us kind of move through and process my son's passing, the cancer, and then you start unwinding all these things. She had just the right personality. She had just the right amount of empathy. Not too much, but not too little. It's like she was like the Goldilocks of our time. Like she was just right. And then that's where I really started. It really drew on every ounce of courage I could have to go back and face these things. But she was right. She was right. By facing them, I can now talk about them without completely breaking down or without hiding from them. I can talk about having been sexually abused. I can talk about other instances that happened along the way. A guy tried to kill me one time. I was 12 years old. He tried to beat my brains in with a steel pipe. He was a psychopath, I guess, and he just got pissed off one day and decided that he was going to put an end to me. And so you have all these experiences, and then by being able to have the courage, God providing me an opportunity, He didn't force it on me. He just provided me an opportunity. And then I think by having the courage to take that opportunity, which was not what I wanted to do, but I felt, which actually came to be through some other examples. One of my core beliefs is there are no hard decisions, there's just hard consequences. And I think like there was a still small voice that was saying, you need to do this. I'm going to, investigate this. Because the first person, I'd found someone near us that did EMDR work, but she couldn't take any more clients. And she goes, but I've got a great therapist who just started her practice in this area, and she's over there. I know her really well. She's really good at this. Call her. And it turned out that she was the one I was supposed to see, because I was disappointed because I'd been through like 3 different therapists trying to find them, and they were all like, no, we're not taking new clients. No, we're not taking new clients. And I got to this one. She goes, I'm not taking new clients, but I got somebody for you to talk to. And so it was like, it was like God had put up this barrier and went, not that one, not that one, not that one, that one. But then it was still my choice at that point, right? And it was my wife's choice, and it was my children's choice. Like what God had provided us was a path, but He didn't force us to walk down it. He just said, here's your path if you choose to. It'll be hard. It will not be pleasant, but it will be what's best for you. And I think by making the choice to take that path, and I think that's something that your listeners can apply. When that still small voice is talking to you and it's telling you that this is what you should do, there almost always will be a very loud, obnoxious voice that's telling you all the negative consequences of doing that thing. And it's working to convince you not to do that thing. And I think if you can show the courage at that moment to follow the still small voice, what you'll find is that the really loud voice was not accurate. It was telling you a lot of things that might happen that will actually never occur. And that's, like I said, that's where the core belief, there are no hard decisions, there's only hard consequences. I observed in myself and other people that people say, well, that's a hard decision. Like it was a hard decision to do EMDR and confront all these things that had happened so that I could live a better life. Well, it actually wasn't a hard decision. I knew what decision to make. The still small voice had told me what decision to make. Like it had guided me and given me an opportunity. What happened was the potential consequences from that really loud voice, I had taken those consequences and put them on top of the decision. And then I said, well, the decision's hard, but I think one of the things that was shown to me was, no, you've taken the consequences that you're fearful might happen and you put them on the decision. So if you take those consequences off and you just listen to the still small voice, now, is it a hard decision? And it was like, well, no, it's not a hard decision. I know what I'm supposed to do. And so it was like, the universe was showing me, like God had created this way to show me. He's like, it's not a hard decision. Your fears are making it a hard decision. And so one of my core beliefs became to remember when I get in situations where it feels like it's a hard decision, to remind myself, okay, take a minute and separate out what you think are the consequences of making this decision, and then decide if it's the right thing. Which voice is telling you this, because if you're standing on the African, savannah, and there's a lion nearby, you really want to listen to the loud voice, right? Listen to the loud voice. But life, 99% of the time, there's not a lion attacking you. You may just feel like you're going to die. You may feel like this is, here's all the negative consequences. But if you can separate those, then a lot of times, if you get quiet, there will be that voice that's helping you make that decision, get away from that abusive relationship, stop doing this thing, do this new thing, and you're like, wow, I can't do that new thing. Like, I don't have the ability to do that. That'll be too painful. I don't want to do that. Well, what if it all falls apart? What if it almost never is? I have great confidence in that still small voice. I've learned to have less confidence in the loud voice.
Be safe and be positive. And don't forget to check out our social media handles. Thank you. Bye for now.